he's like, I feel like it's a maybe a 40-60, you make it, 60 you don't, but you could turn your 120 grand into a couple $1 million if you want to try it. And I'm like, dude,
roll it.
And that was the last time I saw that money.
The whole concept for Move is make a difference. O, to offer up your time, talent, and gifts. B, there's victory in the small things. And E, to encourage others. And so I started to move.
Hello, everybody, and thank you for tuning in to the Move podcast. I'm Scotty Carlisle, your host. I guess you can call me that. For the next 45 minutes, you're going to be stuck with me. But the cool thing is I have a guest. I don't even know the whole story, but I've just gotten little slim pickings of certain things. So I'm actually very excited to delve into this. We have somebody very special today, Justin Simpers.
How's everybody doing?
We need a audience like, well, yeah. We actually have it over there, but I don't know how to put it on a speaker. So I'm going to figure that out. So next time he'll do that and it'll be like, yay! Yeah, that'll be cool.
Or a bomb.
Yeah. Wah, wah, wah. Yeah. That one too. But Justin, thank you for coming on the show today, man.
Thank you for having me.
So have you listened to any other podcast?
Honestly, no.
It's okay. It's okay. Nobody else has. Except for my mom. My mom,
your mom,
she listened to, I think, 2 of them.
Yeah.
And then she's like, Scott, no. I've actually, it's not doing too bad, surprisingly. So I was pretty happy
I will
about
check it out for sure. I do promise that. But it's just been nutso at the house and work and everything. It's been crazy.
Well, it's, and a lot of times podcasts are long.
Oh, yeah.
So hour, 2 hours. I mean, Rogan, right? 4 hours sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
But so it's my travel time. So, I started when I'm driving and then I stop it and then I start it. And so on the ones. Do you listen to any podcasts?
No. See, there you go.
None at all.
No.
Okay, I don't feel bad now.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't. No. My wife does, and she does like audiobooks too. I think that I should probably start doing that because I read, but I think it would be.
When do you have time to read? That's my question. I don't do
early morning reading. It's like when you get up, typically I read I always read on a plane. So whenever I travel, I read a book. Sometimes in the early morning, maybe on the weekends if I get time, but yeah. And I usually always read things that I'm better at, which is like, or wanting to explore is like self-help. My wife is, she was even telling me, she's like, you read stuff that you're good at, like sales books, and I'm like, I just can't stop reading those.
Yeah,
stuff.
Preaching to the choir, man. Preaching to the choir.
Yeah. Yeah.
She's probably saying you should write these books.
Yeah. No, that is something that actually I'm not in the process of doing right now, but I will be doing for sure. Kind of like life and then my take on sales, and because I feel like it's a little different, like that's what I do videos too, my YouTube channel and stuff, and it's sales help. And really, like, I feel like the big miss with the sales books and the people obviously reading them is the foundation and where you're at in your life, and so like I remember when I started selling timeshare, in it was 99, and literally I was, I threw myself into the industry, I actually owned a Subway franchise. I bought the rights when I was 19 and put all the money into that, and then it flopped, and then I ended up on my face, and I came out of nothing, just, all right, I got to try sales. And so...
Okay, hold on a second.
Yeah.
You're 19.
Yeah.
And you buy a Subway franchise.
Yeah.
How the hell did that happen?
So my dad was a bodyguard. And he got in an elevator accident. And he was in an elevator, and it fell 33 floors. And so that happened when I was about 13 or 14. And so he was suing the elevator, Otis Elevator. And I was in high school, and those years of my life, I was, we did not have means. Let's just put it that way.
Yeah.
Like everything was either given to me, a hand-me-down or something like that. And I was working jobs and all that stuff. So anyway, 5-6 years go by. I told my dad, forget about the lawsuit. It's never happening. And so my dad called me. He's like, we just got paid, And so as a token, for me stepping up as a teenager and putting the food on the table, my dad, he said, well, what do you want to do with, your portion of the money? And I was like, well, I want a business, I want to go into business for myself, and so I had a friend, and he actually had some money. He got hit by a drunk driver, and so he had money sitting there till he was 18, and so we went in together and opened up a Subway in Burbank, so that was...
Man, I got so many damn questions about that. Starting with your dad, though, because... So 33 freaking stories in an elevator, and he lived.
Yeah. There were actually 8 people in the elevator, and there's a big spring on the bottom of those elevators, like a shock spring, kind of similar. So it fell down. The emergency brakes failed, and it hit the spring. And apparently, it hit the spring. My dad was the only one left standing. Everybody else laid down. Which is what you should do. And he was actually holding a case of wine, and he just, I think froze, and then it broke his back in I think 3 different places. When it hit, and then it went up like 5-6 stories, and it came back down. It kind of did bang, 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 and so yeah. I mean, I came home from school one day, and my dad was like, I broke my back. He was laying in the chair. And
he was back home, though.
Yeah. They took him to the hospital, took x-rays, like, yeah, your back's broken, and there was nothing really to do with that. No fusing, no nothing, And so, it was an interesting time.
My dad fell off a 3.5-story building. He was doing construction. It was on top of a Kmart, and he picked up a sheet of plywood. A gust of wind came in, and he woke up, and basically he said his stomach was swollen out to here. He was in stirrups, and he had crushed his spleen, broke like 7 ribs. He had to have a hip replacement. Jacked up, said he wouldn't ever walk again, and all that stuff. So, so as I grew up, it was like Walgreens in my house. You know, every prescription drug that you can imagine, it was like, it was a constant. That was a constant thing. Yeah. So, and a lot of other issues that went along with all of those themes. Did you have any issues? Like, did your dad ever have any issues with any prescriptions?
Oh, no. My dad was, he's a military guy. He retired military helicopter pilot. And so he was very, straight-laced. He said he had tried weed one time, and I doubt that ever even happened. I think he said that just to be cool. And my dad's he's a straight-laced guy, apple pie and just regular, I call him a normie, So yeah, he's
well, the fact that he ended up giving you a portion of that. Is, that says a lot. Is he still alive now? That's awesome, man.
Yeah, he is. He retired to Arkansas, so
he's smart too.
Yeah, shortly after he was, he was out of California, and so yeah, he wanted to be in the mountains in the middle of nowhere,
Damn.
So yeah,
he sees the writing on the wall.
Yeah, he did. That was about 25 years ago that he moved out. He moved in 97. And so yeah, it was. He moved out of the house though, right after he got the money. He was pretty much bing and then bang. Like, you're on your own, bud. I'm like,
and then boom.
Yeah, pretty much.
So, okay, now, so you're 19, you just went into business with your buddy.
Yeah.
A Subway in Burbank.
Yeah. And we built it, picked the location and everything, and scouted it out, and it was a process. It took us about, I opened a week after my 21st birthday. So it took us a year and a half, 2 years to, go to the University of Subway, Milford, Connecticut I actually had that on my resume at one time for my college experience because I dropped out of college to do this, so not recommended. Anyway, so we did all that, our store was doing really well, but my, the city of Burbank decided at the last minute they were going to do a parking structure behind our store. And so I came to the store one Monday morning, and the whole back of the store, this is in like Old Town Burbank. It's very I don't even know how to use the words, but it's like historic in a way. It's kind of like Old Town Whittier, it's got like this, but they were changing some things. So they boarded up the whole parking lot, which was, 400, 500 spaces behind my store. And, nobody could park anywhere near the store. So I was like, why are my sandwich sales like $250, because I came in the other way and the guy was like, look in the back, and I went in the back and I was just like, oh my God. It had a little notice. It was like construction from, June of 1997 to, 2002. And I was like, there's not going to be any parking here for 5 years. Our rent was like, what was our rent? It was like $4,000 a month at the time. $250 a day in sandwich sales is
not going to cut it.
No. So we ended up having to get out of that business. And we did sue. We sued the city of Burbank with, Super Crown, World's Gym, Starbucks, La Salsa, like Fat Burger. All of us sued the city of Burbank, and we all got nothing, and it was just one of those unfortunate events, which, that flung me into a deep spiral of methamphetamine abuse. I was out there from 97 to 99, I was pissed off at the world.
And there was nothing you can do except, like, were you able to get out of your lease or?
No, I sold it. So I sold it to this gal that I knew who owned a store that was in another part of Burbank. She always liked our store. And they bought it, and they had a lot of money, and they were thinking that they could just ride it out because that store could have been a gold mine, And so after 2 or plus years that Mo bought the store, she ended up giving it back to the Subway Corporation. And then they operated it for another year or two, and then they paid out the lease, and it's now like a frozen yogurt spot. So, yeah.
Damn.
I know.
Okay, and then now, so then you try to go back to college.
No, I was. So,
that was in your resume you put with your college.
Yeah, that was my college, and the resume was the University of Subway, Milford, Connecticut. So no, after that, I was really pissed off at the world. Like my partner and I, Donald, we had like about $60,000 a piece. We had a bunch of cars, and we were just trying to restore them and make money doing that. And, I ended up discovering what meth was, and that quickly ended all of that.
Everything.
Yeah. Everything.
It has a habit of doing that.
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean.
So obviously when you go down that road, there's a shitstorm, right?
Oh, yeah.
And then usually life has a shitstorm, you have an umbrella.
Oh,
but
yeah.
You sold that so you get meth. So now the shitstorm is just hitting you right upside your head, basically.
It was hitting me right upside the head, and I, got involved with people I probably didn't need to be involved with, and did things that, I could never imagine myself doing, and stealing, and doing all kinds of just dirty stuff, and I say this, because my sobriety is twofold. It's the meth sobriety, which was a hard bottom. Physically, I was 178 pounds. I was just depleted. I ended up, getting out of California and going to live with my dad in Arkansas. And that's, where I sobered up from meth, and it was a.
So you had to take yourself out of the situation.
Oh, yeah. I ended up going out there, and, it was, probably 2 months, of about a month of being in bed, because I was not a functional user with that drug. It was, completely consumed me. And
now, was that the only thing? Because usually when you're doing meth, there's other things that you're...
that was the only thing. I did not ever get into like the speedball combos or anything like that. I only did meth, and smoking it was my thing. I didn't, needles or anything like that. No, I can't say that I had morals with that, but it's just something that I didn't really, I just didn't feel necessarily I didn't desire to go any deeper. It was like perfect for me, And so,
and what your dad, what was the conversation with your dad?
My dad, he was in the don't ask, don't tell mode when I came out there. He was like, you need a place to stay. I got you. It was a perfect situation for me. And him and his wife at the time, we lost her last year, but she, they both were super, welcoming and forgiving, And I ended up telling them what happened, and my dad's just kind of like, that's okay. I still love you. Okay, bye. But yeah, I ended up telling them, what happened, but, yeah, I mean, so that's when I started in sales. I wasn't, on meth anymore, and I started in sales, and then that was timeshare, So
that was your first sales job, was timeshare.
Yeah.
I mean, that's pretty hardcore sales.
It is hardcore sales. I mean, it's out of my whole career is, almost 30 years of doing that. Because I consider the Subway sales, because I sold our store. I went door to door selling, hey, I'll bring you sandwiches for lunch. You got to try it, so that was also sales. But that was like, Glengarry, Glen Ross, Boiler Room. Yeah, just... You got to read these books, go to these classes, take this course, do this, do that, trying to box everybody in, and and a kid trying to sell timeshare that has never really taken a vacation as a family anyway is a total, different situation, right? Like that's, but when I hit it, like I literally, in the first couple months of selling timeshare, I was salesperson of the month a couple months in a row. And so it was kind of like I took to it, because I could relate, and I'm like, I'm listening to you, I'm diving in, but I can relate. And so to pretty much anybody. And then I started figuring out that timeshare where I was at, they actually the FBI came in. And so they were pitching heat, and selling bullshit. And so I did not know, I'm just like a kid with a deer, the headlights, and I'm the deer, and I'm just crossing the street. I had no idea. And, so I left that place, but that affected my sales ability, and so I was kind of like I was a good salesperson, a top one. And then I was like, I need to get the hell out of here. I need to go back to California,
So the timeshare was in Arkansas.
Yeah.
Got it.
It was actually in Branson, Missouri.
Ooh.
My dad lives in northern Arkansas, which is 20 minutes outside of Branson.
Got it.
So I was selling, timeshare to a bunch of middle America,
Yeah. Yep.
So, but I I wouldn't change that for anything, the experience I got from that at all.
Well, I mean, after you deal with in that environment, you get like your knife gets sharpened.
Oh yeah,
because there's a lot of chunks that
and they come quick.
Yeah,
they come quick. And so I mean then I ended up back in California, my buddy's couch, and I was bouncing at a bar at night and selling lease financing by day. So it was cold calls. It went from in person to pure, how many coldies did you make today?
Dialing for dollars.
Oh, yeah. And so, they hired, it was a typical sales environment. They hired, 20 people. And after a year, it was me and one other guy that were left out of that group, And so I did okay there. I didn't do bad, but I will mention though, so my soft bottom I never really had a problem drinking, pills. I can go down the wrong road and have done that in my past, but the soft bottom for me was marijuana. And that for me, became an eighth a day habit that I had, where I couldn't go out on a date. I couldn't go to sleep.
Get your head right
I couldn't
first.
eat. I couldn't finish eating. I couldn't see a movie. I couldn't do anything without getting high. And so that lasted a long time. And so, anyway, I just wanted to mention that because that is like that is a constant in all of these adventures that I'm talking about, with where I'm working, what I'm doing,
Well, when did that start?
Right after I got sober from meth, when I got my first set of friends in Arkansas. It was like, oh, we got weed. I'm like, oh, thank you, And
Yeah.
so, and that became a constant, and I was functioning with it, but at the same time, there was never a moment during the day where I wasn't high, And it works great for some people. Heck, I wish I could, just have a puff every once in a while, but that's not the journey for me. You know, I remember I tried to quit one time, and then I ended up at a Pink Floyd concert, and I was sober for
Not the place you want to be if you're trying to quit.
no.
smoking weed.
It's so I was sober for I would say 4 months, from weed, and I ended up at the concert and a joint gets passed my way, and I didn't even think twice. It was just like boom, and then all of a sudden, I was high, and I was like, God, this feels like it did when I was 19 or 17 again. This is amazing, and literally every joint that came my way, it was just like out on the tongue, flipped out my cigarette pack, and just started packing the doobies in there, right?
Yeah,
and
yeah.
so my friends were like, where's the joint? Like every
I don't know.
fifth one, I'd be like, oh, here you go, like. So literally, I remember leaving that place, and I'm like, I don't even know how the hell I smoked weed all day, every day. This is flipping crazy. Like, I'm just going to go back and have weed every once in a while. And it was like the next day, I smoked all of those joints.
Damn.
It was right back into right back in. And by the end of the next day, I wasn't even high anymore. It was just smoking to smoke. And it was just, it was too much. But anyway, yeah, that had been the constant. And that's why, when I talk about sales and building on a foundation, where are you at, And so if you're going to build on sand, that foundation's never going to be, or the growth is never going to be, as if you were on a rock, And so, like, where are you at? And so, like, people will say, well, ask this question, don't ask that question, ask this question. And the more sales books I read, I was like, God, they're missing, the big part, and the big part is, and I'm not saying abstinence is key, or, like you can't have sex till you're married, or, you don't ever puff a joint, or, that's not it at all. But what I found is whatever, like, if your vice is controlling your life, and it's not healthy, because people work out and that's what they do, good for you, like, good for you. But if it's a vice that controls your life, that's unhealthy, and you need to address that first, because I have had people that I've worked with at different parts of my life that I've worked with again, and in my industry with what I do now, I'm like, nationally, out of all the AEs in the country, I would be a top 10 AE in the country, out of everybody. And
It's pretty, I'd say that's pretty badass.
yeah, and but people, I remember they'd asked, they said, well, what's different? You seem like kind of the same guy, but what's different? I'm like, dude, I don't get high all day, every day anymore, And they're like, what? And that got me thinking, though, because that was the honest truth. But yeah, overcoming that, I would say that part of the, addiction gene that I have, for whatever reason, was harder than meth, for me. And
That says a lot.
It was.
That says a whole lot, actually.
Meth was like, I'm going to die, or I'm going to die. Weeds, just like, for me, and it said, was death on the installment plan, it's like a little bit every day, just slice you down, And again, like, I'm not saying, you can't smoke a joint. I can't. Right. And I don't judge people. I still have friends, like the guy I own my Subway franchise with. We're still really good friends. He actually works with me. It's like they can have, a hit a day. I never was that guy. If they had one bong load, I had 8, If they brought out an 8.
You just gotta know where you fit, like you said. Where are you?
Like, I can have a drink of alcohol. Like, I could have, a glass of beer or bourbon and the next night not pick it up. You know what I mean? Or a week later have a sip or not, or, and it's not like where I'm like, it runs anything,
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I mean, that was the constant during my sales career, and that's like, after the crash of the mortgage market, in 2007, that's when I really started to take a look at myself and was just analyzing, But yeah, I mean, so anyway, flashing back, did the lease financing and, was a bouncer, which was fun. Literally, slept barely, but I got back on my feet, and I ended up getting my own place again. And that's when I started to get in the mortgage industry. It was 2002, right in the beginning of 2002. And that was like, I came from the inside out. So I worked as an account manager on the inside. So I learned the business and, how loans fund, how wires go out, how, the underwriters look at conditions and talking to the underwriters and talking, so I figured out the business from the inside out, which made me, dangerous.
Yeah, that's
out
valuable.
In the field.
That's valuable information.
Yeah. And I came there not to be on the inside, but they were like, you have to learn, because I wanted to do sales, they're like, you have to learn the business first. And I did that. So I was an account manager for like a year and a half, and, I was funding, the most units at certain months, I was always like competitive and like trying to learn as much of it as possible. So by the time I went out in the field, I was, able to put deals together, and help brokers out, and so, yeah, that was the.
And now with your background, and just because I know the industry as well, because when I was doing the insurance and the financial advising, the majority of my clients were brokers and loan officers,
right,
and real estate agents. That was because I would go in and I'd do magic tricks, right? And so I'd show, like, you'd be my client, and then I'd go in and like just bring my deck of cards, and then that's all it would take. And then now I know everybody in the office, right? Right. And then at night we'd all go out and and it was like talk about some party and mofos.
Oh yeah.
And so with your background. And then getting into that, so did that ever lead into any shenanigans? I mean, it had to.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I'll never forget, and I still talk to this guy to this day. He's the coolest guy. I will not mention his name, but he's Catholic. And I the first time, actually the second time I met him, was I met him in this is when account executives would go to the broker's offices, which doesn't usually happen anymore, but. I went into the office and I met him, and we hit it off, and so like 2 weeks later I'm going in, and it was Fat Tuesday. And so I go into the office and he's got Coke all over his like all over. And he's just like he's like looking at me like, yeah. And I'm like, bro, are you okay? And he's like, I'm fine. He's like, it's the day before Lent, And I was like, what are you doing? He's like, I'm going to be abstinent for 40 days. And so I'm really taking advantage of it right now. And now he's married with kids, and fully grown up. But it was funny because I was just like, my God, it was crazy.
Well, excuse me. We can laugh about it now, but at the time. So I also had some friends in a similar situation. I had one that was a broker that I came to visit. He was under his desk literally under his desk, and he had been there for a little while.
Oh, yeah.
Like, he went off the deep end, and he also, and then he had a lot, and he lost it all.
Oh, yeah.
And it's, now it's taken him years to turn things around and get back up on top. Now he's living somewhere else, has a beautiful wife and another, family and all that kind of stuff, and is happy and is in a different kind of business. But he really went all the way,
Oh, yeah.
and so it's good when you are talking to people that are still in the business, right?
Oh, yeah.
That they went through the hard time, but they're still trucking, plugging away.
I fully agree. I mean, it is funny. I feel like when 07 happened, it was a come to Jesus for a lot of people, and some people got it and some people didn't, and it took me a while to get it. I was that guy I rolled my 401k, which I only had 120 grand. And, at that time I'm young, I'm spending money like water, right? I saved nothing,
Yep.
So we lose, the company closes in August of 07. My ex-wife and I decide we're going to get a divorce in November.
Oh, man.
And, on January, 18th, when the stock market crashed, I rolled. So right before that, I had nothing. So I was just like, let's just throw the Hail Mary, So I was listening to my guy, and he was doing puts and calls with the market.
Oh, no.
Yeah. And so he was like, well, we got some plays here, I'm like, I'm looking to be risky, and so I did a deal with him in January of 08, and I made 20 grand in a day with my 120 grand. So I was like, okay. And he's like, so tomorrow this is what I got. We can make this play, and he's like, I feel like it's a maybe a 40-60, 40, you make it, 60 you don't, but you could turn your 120 grand into a couple $1 million if you want to try it. And I'm like, dude,
roll it.
And that was the last time I saw that money, because it literally was like that, and then it was like the crash of the market in 08 and the stock market, and I was just like, oh my god, and so literally
now you're divorced.
We're going through it, all of the things, and so I mean it was crazy. I lost the house. I ended up doing the short sale. It took them forever to take it, though. So I didn't leave until 2011. So it was almost 3 years of being able to I guess live in a box that I actually had windows. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no kidding.
It was a cardboard house that was a real house that I did not pay a dime on for 3 years. And but that was a humdinger, So we had all the plays, and that's why, I remember when I interviewed for the job at autotrader.com, it was literally, I think it was 300 to 400 mortgage professionals were all bidding for that job. They all wanted that job. There was one available.
Guacamole.
So there were literally, I think, 4 total interviews, and I needed that job so bad, I was like, literally, I will jump through a hoop like that right now. It just, what do you want me to do, And so when I landed that job, I was so thankful,
Talk about a saving grace.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I had already, and it was at the point where I was like, my $150,000 a year job wasn't cutting the lifestyle that I had from before, right? So my monthly go and my monthly spend, so it was like I have the house and the credit cards, all the ex-wife's credit cards, and a car. And so I took that money and, paid off some things that were federal, right? Because you don't want those debts, but it was the car and to be able to pay for myself to live, and that was where I was like, I got to cut some losses here, But I was, that's why, this whole, being able to revisit the past and being an AE, doing what I did before now, but with the mindset that I have now and where I've gone with it is gotten me to a point where I'm like, I need to share some of that experience and strength, that I gained from, falling and hitting, my head on the ground and, figuratively and literally. But yeah, I mean, it's, it got into that. And so I even back in the day when I was the complete pothead, they would fly me around the country to go train AEs, after I got my spot. Like I'd go to this office, talk to this group, take some of the struggling ones, go out in the field, help show them some of the ways, and then I come back and, a couple times a year I was doing that, and flying out. And so I was already used to, helping and, moving people along, from point A to point B. And so that's why, I felt like, yeah, I have something to say, when it comes to like having that foundation. That's where I'm like, you could take me before with all the talent in the world. I was a top 5 AE at my company, nationwide, which doesn't say a lot, right? But now I'm like a top 10 AE out of every company in the nation. And the sales skills I had then were the same that I have now. What's the difference? And the difference is the foundations that I have nurtured my sales skills on is a lot more sturdy and than I had working then, because then it was like everything that I needed was involved weed. Well, I got mad at a burger, smoke a joint. I didn't fund what I wanted to fund, smoke a joint. Now it's like I didn't fund what I want to fund. What am I going to do to make it better? You know what I mean? There's solutions there that don't involve a pipe, and so yeah, that's kind of like where I'm like, yeah, all of those things. And like, I love Gary Vee and I love all those guys and they have really great things to say, but like, where are you,
Yeah.
And so that's what, the 12-step program specifically, which I'm not, saying anybody has to do anything, but that's what I did, and applying that to my life in sales has been like, instrumental in my success as a salesperson. And I will tell you too, like, I feel like the constant need for growth and development as a human is, like the people that are closest to me, my loved ones would tell me, you need to work on this, but
Right.
Can you hear it though? And a lot of times my ego says, hey, no, I don't want to hear that. Right. Like you're this, you're that, and I'm like, dude, I got to stuff that ego way down all the time where I'm like, no, I need that. Like, and I need to constantly like look inside myself.
So what do you think the role of, so you're married again.
Yeah.
How do you think that plays in your success?
She's like, she is like, instrumental. Right. I knew that I wasn't going to be the stoner. Like I never imagined myself on my porch, my cob pipe, that would be what my life would be. And I had a son, I had custody of my son, and he's coming of age. How am I going to be a good dad? And, and all of the things, it's purely, my wife. She's amazing with that. Like she's, she's finishing up her doctoral as a PsyD, so she's a psychologist. So, if there's ever, and she's been in Al-Anon, for long time, and so, yeah, I was actually started in 12-step with Al-Anon, as well.
And Al-Anon, just for people that don't know, what exactly is Al-Anon?
Al-Anon is 12 steps for the family or of loved ones of addicts, and how to deal and how to how to focus on yourself as opposed to whatever else, because the wind and shit can hit you in the face, but how you deal with it is all the difference in the world, and it's not what the addict does to you, it's what you do with yourself when that happens. And so the tools of how to deal with that, were definitely instrumental, And it was funny because I remember being in Al-Anon and I was like pointing. I'm like, yeah, no, they have problems. They have problems. I'm like, oh, wait a minute. I need to pack my 10th bowl for a second. Yeah, no, you have problems and you. And And then, there was a come to Jesus where, I had told my wife that I quit weed. That was the Pink Floyd thing. So,
Got it,
so
okay.
we did all that. We were getting ready for marriage, and I did the Pink Floyd thing happen. And at that point, I was like a crackhead. I was like, we didn't live together because she had her daughter, I had my son. We wanted to we go to church, so it was like, we're gonna do it right, and so do it right, but with weed, and so I was literally like a crackhead hiding it, for a couple months. And then one time, I left my key in her car and I'm like, hey, I can't get in, can you come by? And she's like, she just dropped me off. She's like, yeah, I got to run this errand though. Like had to do something. And so it would have been like an hour. And so I went to the management office. I'm like, can I get the key for my apartment, And so they gave it to me. I go back and I'm like smoking the bowls and blowing it outside and smoking it and blowing it outside, smoking and blowing it outside. And then I was like, oh, and then all of a sudden I hear the key like in the door. And I was like, oh my God, and I'm like, I grab my canister of weed and I put the bong right here and I'm like flipping up a cigarette and trying to light it while I'm running to the bathroom, and my wife is on the phone and she just like came into the house and she sat down and was on the phone. She's like, and had a 20-minute phone conversation. And then she hangs up the phone. She's like, I saw you. I saw you. And I thank God that she was an Al-Anon, because if she wasn't, we would have been done. She was like, you need help. Like, flat out. Like, you need help. And if you want to get it, get it. I love you. I'm here for you. She said all the right things, where I was like, if she tells me that she's going to leave me, then bye. You know what I mean? Which is not what she said, and she's like, you need help. And so I then reached out to my, girls in Al-Anon, because it's pretty much all females that I had meetings with or whatever. And they were like, yeah, there's Marijuana Anonymous. And I'm like, what?
Never heard of that.
Yeah. So it was MA, and I've gone to Narcotics Anonymous. Mm-hmm. I've gone to, there's the meth one. I can't remember exactly what it is. But anyway, yeah, Marijuana Anonymous just suited me best, and so, yeah, and that I sobered up right there. It was June 26th, so that's why I'm coming up on my 9 year, which is cool. So yeah, that was that come to Jesus moment, because at that point when I was running to the bathroom, it wasn't the event that she caught me, like that was like, it was what the lengths that I was going to try and keep this hidden. And I was like looking at myself, I'm like, dude, you're just like you were with the crack pipe, and your dad's going to walk in on you, like you were that freaked out. And I was like, that's like too much, like this has a hold on me, and I need to cut it. Like it's gotta go, and so that was like the beginning of where, I really started like getting serious about, like living a life of with those principles, the 12-step principles. It was just, and it was funny because I was in Al-Anon for probably about a year and a half, and I never worked the steps. I never asked for a sponsor, because I was again like, you got problems, you have some problems, I'm good.
I'm here to help you.
Yeah, And so, but yeah, that was a big step for me, And that when I got the chance to go back into wholesale, that was when I was like, I know I could kill it now, right? And I was just like, I'm not looking back, And like also that thing I think is funny is like, if you're a pothead, you're smoking constantly throughout the day. And then I would sometimes come home at like 3:30 and veg out on PTI, or ESPN, and just like, and just zone out for an hour, and then like, oh, I'll get back into work. And now it's just like, I get my work done. You know what I mean? It's like, I'm ready to get my work done. But yeah, it's, it's just one of those things.
So the what are your thoughts on you helping others? I mean, you've come a long ways, obviously.
Right.
And I would say you're in a position of success and abundance.
Right.
And I have my own thoughts on why that is.
Right.
But one of my thoughts on that is helping others, is experiencing things so you can take that and parlay it to somebody else that's on their face. Right. And so, but what are your thoughts on that? Do you think?
I mean, I'm all about it. And that's where, you know, like it says in our program, like, you know, like you have to share it, you know, and that's part of, you know, doing it, like being a sponsor, you know, and having sponsees and, you know, doing that type of stuff. But that's kind of like where I'm going with my, you know, the videos that I'm doing and the things that I'm doing, because the reality of it is it all revolves around sobriety, you know, and I'm not talking abstinence from any substance, because I will be the first to tell you that I will have a glass of bourbon every now and again, or a beer every now and again. But am I getting shit-faced or drunk? No, you know, but you know, I know what will affect me. So what I'm doing is I'm trying to, you know, figure out a way to share my story, I think, and my experience, and, you know, to start something there, because I feel like there's a lot going on with, you know, substance abuse and, you know, the effects of, and your life, your career on it, you know. And so, yeah, I mean, that's when I started doing videos for work, you know, 3 years ago, and blasting out, it was eventually I started getting to a point, because people have heard my story, you know, and they're like, dude, you need to write a book. And there's a lot more to the story that's even coming out today, but this is like just, I think the important parts. But they're like, you need to write a book. And then, you know, I was like, yeah, you know, maybe I will. And then it started out with doing these videos. And I will tell you, one of the reasons why it's taken me so long to get here is because, and even to this day, like right now, like my son and my niece, she's like my daughter, they don't know about my sobriety story.
Got it.
And so that conversation's coming. Yeah. You know, and so that had been one of those protected subjects for me where I'm like, I can't, you know, but my wife and I have talked, and it's time, you know, for them to know. Yeah. So, yeah.
I agree with that. I think that's a good thing. I think that's, you know, one of the, you know, as I grew up, I had older brothers, 10 years and 9 years older than me. So they got into a lot of shit. Yeah. And because of their mistakes, I learned. Yeah. I made a bunch of my own mistakes. Don't get me wrong. Right. But they made some really bad ones that I was like, oh, yeah, okay. No, I don't want my life to be like that. I'm going this way, you know, which helped. And so I think you doing that, I mean, nobody likes to admit, nobody likes to bring up stuff that is bad, drugs. But guess what? There are drugs. There are freaking drugs. There are child molesters. Yeah. There are murderers. There are thieves. There are all of these things. And if your kid does not know, there's a higher chance they're going to be a victim. So it's like, you know, I think you're doing a good thing by pointing that out. Yeah. So, okay, now the last question, because I know you have a place to go. You got to go somewhere. But the last key piece of the puzzle in success, in my opinion, from what we've talked about, is daily routines or daily habits. Right. And so do you have certain daily routines or daily habits that you are implementing? Or is it every day you just do something different? What's your secret?
That's been my, you know, my Achilles heel, you know. I'm organized and neat, but when it comes to planning a routine, that's something that I've always struggled with. And so that is actually what I'm currently working on. Like, yes, I work out in the morning, and that's every morning. You know, I have the same protein shake in the protein bar every morning during the week, you know, and, you know, I have that down. I, you know, drink some coffee and sit down with my wife every morning. And, you know, outside of that, not yet. And so I was reading a book. I can't remember the name of the title. It was the one I just read was, how to manage your time and create yourself a better schedule so you can have more work-life balance. And so I was reading that, and so I'm going to be implementing some things like, I would like, I'm not a meditating guy, but I would like to, slow down my mind and meditate, I do spend, a couple minutes saying a prayer, before the day begins. The night before, I always write down what I have going on the next day so I can kind of imagine it.
Are you pretty...
I've always done that.
See, that's a big deal, man.
Yeah,
I think.
I've always done that, even back in my using days, So I've always done that. That's one of the things that has been a consistent, is and Friday night when the week ends, I write out the next week, like an outline, like I have to be here on this day, highlight where I need to be out, and then write down the stuff I need to do Monday. Like I do that, But when it comes to like what I was doing, so I read a book last year and so every morning I was reading for, 20, 30 minutes and then I was trying to meditate, but I had no idea what meditation was. So I was like, and then I'm like, this is stupid. And I'm like, let me just sit here and breathe and think of nothing. I'm like, I can't do this. It's like my mind's just like, and so my projects are to figure out, how I can get my mind right better, quicker, faster in the morning and develop more of that routine.
So basically, you've talked about your story of why, of your success. Okay?
Right.
So as an outsider looking in and looking at, when you taste something, you're like, what are those ingredients?
Yeah.
I definitely, there's some cayenne pepper in there and,
Right.
So as I'm trying to gauge what the recipe is, there's a couple of bright lights that I'm seeing, right? The first one is self-reflection.
Right.
So I think if anybody is listening to this and they're trying to improve their situation, they want to be a successful person in whatever regard.
Right.
I think one of the most important parts is where are you at?
Right.
Ask themselves in the mirror, where am I at?
Right.
And if you have habits that are deviating from the path where you're trying to get to,
right,
you're not going to get there,
right,
or it's going to take you a lot longer. And so just that self-reflection of looking and saying, that's not conducive to where I want to go.
Right.
And being able to actually stifle your ego, like you said, shove it down there.
Hard to do. Yeah.
It's very hard to do, for some harder than others.
Yeah. Because
nobody likes to think about, I'm not doing the right thing,
Right.
We all want to be the heroes. We all want to be the good guy. We don't want to be the bad guy. We don't want to be the
Right.
thief.
Right.
We want to be the good guys. So self-reflection, and what comes with self-reflection is humility.
Oh yeah.
So what I see, what I'm listening, what I'm seeing is a big old piece of humble pie. Like I feel like you are sincere, and with humble pie comes sincerity.
Right.
Right. And so there's a big thing with being humble and being sincere. Like the words that are coming out of your mouth. What Chris Rock said? I can't remember. Anyway,
Yeah.
Do you hear the words that come out of my mouth?
Do you hear me?
I feel like they come from a place of sincerity,
Right.
which is very important.
Yeah.
Because if people don't trust you, then nobody's going to do business with you.
Right.
And I think that you're also making yourself vulnerable, right? And which makes you real.
Oh yeah.
You're not a cheesy freaking salesperson
Right.
that's like, hey, let me tell you, this is the best.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Get that shit away from me. You
Yeah.
know, nobody wants to hear that. You're being real. You're being straightforward, and you're speaking from your heart.
Oh yeah.
So, and I think that comes across in your videos. I think that you have activities, like the fact that I get an email from you, I think every freaking day.
Yeah.
And there's a video, like, nobody else does that, dude.
Yeah.
Like, I got, there's a couple other ones that sparsely, here's
Right.
one and here's one. But in my opinion, like, that's an indicator of success, man.
Yeah.
So,
Thank you.
and the fact that you're here and you're sharing it,
Yeah.
dude, you're gracing me with your presence, honestly. And whoever's listening to this, because each episode that I've done, there's a little nugget, right? There's nuggets of things that are cool, that are beneficial. Like you hear and you're like, oh, cool.
Yeah.
And this did not disappoint, man. So I guarantee that there's going to be people listening to this going, yeah, that makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
And I hope they look at themselves in the mirror and ask, I need to be doing the same thing,
Oh, yeah.
So
I constantly got to be reminding myself to check myself. And my wife will remind me if I don't remind me.
Son bitch. Yeah, mine too.
Yeah.
There's a book I read. It's called Atomic Habits.
Oh, okay.
And this is one of the things, like, it's the best book when it comes to creating habits for yourself. It
Right.
breaks everything down into the micro level, and it's basically the moral of the story is little things every day
Right.
add up to big things. And so, but my problem is I read it, I understand it. Why the hell am I not doing it?
Right.
And that's my struggle too. It's like I gotta try to push because I want to be better. I want to be the best version of me. I want to do right. I want to have an impact.
Oh, yeah.
And in order for me to have an impact, I have to do everything that you talked about today.
Yeah.
And be sincere and self-reflect and be vulnerable and be humble and
Oh, yeah.
and have activities that are going to make an impact. And
Amen.
anyway, I think I've definitely gleaned some insight, man.
Yeah,
so
thank
I
you.
appreciate you coming in.
Yeah.
And I know you got shit to do.
Yeah.
If somebody wants to get a hold of you, they want to ask you about your story or
Yeah, they could email me at justinsimpers.com.
spell it.
JUSTINSIM as in Mary, P as in Paul, ERS at gmail.com. I also have a website. It's justinsimpers.com. So, yeah, you go there. Check it out. Videos. Email me. Yeah.
Very cool.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for your time.
Yeah.
And everybody out there in podcast land, podcast world, I love you, and I'm going to have to leave you. But I'll see you next time.